What happens if you sprinkle a handful of bone meal around the base of your azalea? Some gardeners swear it's the secret to bigger, better blooms. Others say it can quietly wreck the very soil your azalea needs to survive. So which one is it? Miracle fix or hidden mistake? By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what bone meal does to an azalea, when it helps, when it hurts, and how to use it the right way. Stick around because the answer might surprise you. Before we dig in, if you're into practical, no-nonsense growing tips that actually work, hit that subscribe button. I put out videos like this every week and you don't want to miss the next one. Okay, let's get into it. Let's start by talking about what bone meal actually is, because a lot of gardeners use it without really knowing what's inside the bag. Bone meal is made from ground-up animal bones, usually from cattle, that have been steamed and finely milled into a powder. It's one of the oldest soil amendments in gardening history, and it's prized mainly for two things: phosphorus and calcium. Phosphorus is the big one. Bone meal typically contains somewhere between 10 and 15% phosphorus, listed on the bag as the middle number in the NPK ratio, something like 3:15:0 or 2:14:0. Phosphorus in bone meal comes mostly in the form of calcium phosphate, a compound that breaks down slowly in the soil. As it breaks down, soil microbes and mild acids convert it into phosphate ions that plant roots can actually absorb. This slow breakdown is important. It means bone meal doesn't dump a big shot of phosphorus all at once. Instead, it releases it gradually over weeks and months, which is very different from how a quick-release liquid fertilizer behaves. The second major component is calcium, and there's a lot of it, often 15 to 25% by weight. Calcium plays a structural role in plants. It's a building block for cell walls, and it helps different parts of the plant communicate and function properly at a cellular level. Without enough calcium, new growth can become weak, distorted, or prone to collapse. Bone meal also contains small amounts of nitrogen, usually only 1 to 4%, so it's not a nitrogen fertilizer by any stretch. And it carries trace amounts of other minerals like magnesium and sulfur, though these are minor compared to the phosphorus and calcium content. Here's the part that matters most for today's topic, though. Bone meal is naturally alkaline. When it breaks down in soil, it tends to raise the pH, meaning it makes the soil less acidic over time. This is a completely neutral fact on its own. For a lot of plants, that's not a problem at all, and for some plants that struggle in acidic soil, it's actually a benefit. But it becomes a very important detail the moment we start talking about azaleas, because azaleas are famous for one very specific requirement. They need acidic soil to survive and thrive. Keep that in the back of your mind, because we're about to connect these dots directly. So to sum up the composition, bone meal is a slow-release source of phosphorus and calcium, low in nitrogen, and alkaline in its effect on soil pH. 3 simple facts. But as you'll see in the next section, each one of those facts interacts with an azalea's biology in a very specific way. Now let's flip over to the azalea itself and talk about what this plant actually needs to grow well, bloom heavily, and stay healthy year after year. Azaleas are acid-loving shrubs. They belong to the same family as rhododendrons, blueberries, and camellias, and they all share one defining trait. Their roots are adapted to function best in soil with a pH between about 4.5 and 6.0. This isn't a small preference, it's central to how the plant absorbs nutrients. Azaleas rely on a relationship with beneficial fungi in the soil, and those fungi, along with the plant's fine root hairs, work most efficiently in that narrow acidic range. When soil pH climbs too high, something frustrating happens. Important nutrients like iron and manganese become chemically locked up in the soil. They're technically still there, but the plant can't pull them out. This condition is called Lyme-induced chlorosis, and it shows up as yellowing leaves with green veins, stunted new growth, and a generally unhappy-looking shrub. So, right away, you can see the tension. Azaleas need low pH to access their nutrients properly, and bone meal, over time, pushes soil pH upward. That's the first major connection point between the liquid and the plant, and we'll come back to it. Now, what nutrients does an azalea actually want in good supply? Nitrogen is important for healthy leaf and stem growth, especially in spring when the plant is pushing out new foliage. Potassium supports overall plant vigor, helps regulate water movement within the plant, and contributes to stronger stems and better resistance to stress. Azaleas also appreciate moderate phosphorus, particularly to support root development and flower bud formation. This is where bone meal's biggest strength comes into play. A well-timed, modest phosphorus boost can genuinely support bud set and blooming. Calcium is useful too, since it supports healthy cell structure in new growth, and bone meal delivers plenty of that as well. So, on paper, bone meal's phosphorus and calcium content does line up with two things azaleas can use: better bud and root development and structural strength in new tissue. But here's the catch, and it's the same one we flagged in the composition section. Azaleas typically don't need huge amounts of phosphorus. Unlike heavy blooming annuals that burn through phosphorus quickly, azaleas are relatively modest phosphorus feeders. Meanwhile, they're extremely sensitive to alkaline conditions. So a fertilizer that's very high in phosphorus and calcium, but also pushes pH upward, is a mixed bag for this particular plant. It offers something the azalea can use in moderation, while simultaneously threatening the acidic environment the plant depends on for everything else. This is exactly why bone meal is a use with caution and awareness amendment for azaleas rather than a simple yes or no answer. Used thoughtfully in small amounts alongside soil pH monitoring, it can support root and bud development. Used carelessly or repeatedly without checking pH, it can slowly shift the soil away from the acidic range your azalea needs to survive, undermining the plant's ability to take up iron and manganese even while phosphorus levels are perfectly fine. Understanding this balance is the difference between a gardener who gets healthy blooms and one who ends up with yellowing, struggling shrubs and no clear idea why. So let's talk honestly about both sides, because bone meal is neither a miracle product nor a villain. It's a tool, and like any tool, it depends entirely on how you use it. Used correctly, in the right amount and at the right time, bone meal can genuinely benefit an azalea. The slow-release phosphorus supports root establishment, which matters most when a plant is newly transplanted or recovering from stress. It can also contribute to stronger flower bud formation for the following season, and the calcium content supports firm, healthy new growth. Because it breaks down slowly, there's a lower risk of a sudden nutrient spike compared to fast-acting liquid fertilizers. When used sparingly, it's a gentle, gradual amendment rather than an aggressive one. But now, here's the warning, and I want you to really hear this part. The danger with bone meal and azaleas isn't a dramatic overnight disaster. It's a slow, quiet one that sneaks up on you. If you apply bone meal repeatedly, in large amounts, or without ever checking your soil pH, you can gradually push acidic soil toward neutral or even slightly alkaline. And once that happens, your azalea starts losing access to iron and manganese, even if those minerals are technically present in the soil. The result is chlorotic, yellowing leaves, weak new growth, fewer blooms, and a shrub that looks like it's fading for no obvious reason, because the real cause is invisible, happening in the chemistry of the soil rather than on the surface. Overuse can also lead to phosphorus buildup, which isn't just wasted. Excess phosphorus can interfere with the uptake of other nutrients like zinc, compounding the problem. And bone meal applied too close to tender roots in concentrated pockets rather than spread evenly can create localized salt stress that damages fine root hairs. The bottom line, bone meal isn't inherently harmful, and it isn't inherently magic either. It's a slow-acting, alkaline-leaning amendment being used on a plant that specifically requires acidic conditions to function well. That combination demands respect, moderation, and monitoring, which is exactly what we're going to walk through next. If you've decided bone meal makes sense for your azalea, maybe you're planting a new one, or your soil test shows low phosphorus, here's exactly how to apply it the right way. Step 1. Test your soil first. Before adding anything, use a simple soil pH test kit or meter to check where your soil currently sits. If it's already above 6.0, hold off on bone meal altogether and address the pH issue separately, since adding more alkaline material will only make things worse. Step 2. Choose the right moment. The best time to apply bone meal is at planting time, when you're settling a new azalea into the ground, or once in early spring before major growth begins. We'll cover timing in more depth in the next section, but keep this in mind as you prepare. Step 3. Measure carefully. For an established azalea, use no more than about 2 to 3 tablespoons of bone meal for a small to medium shrub, or follow the product label's recommended rate. Bone meal products vary in concentration, so the label is your best guide. For a newly planted azalea, you can mix 1 to 2 tablespoons directly into the backfill soil at planting time, blending it thoroughly rather than concentrating it in one spot. Step 4. Apply it away from the direct root ball. Sprinkle the bone meal in a ring around the drip line of the plant, roughly where the outer leaves extend to, rather than piling it against the base of the stem or directly onto exposed roots. This encourages roots to grow toward the nutrient zone naturally, rather than causing direct root contact with concentrated powder. Step 5. Work it into the topsoil. Using a hand trowel or cultivator, gently mix the bone meal into the top 2 to 3 inches of soil. This helps it start breaking down and prevents it from simply sitting on the surface, where it can attract animals or wash away in heavy rain. Step 6. Water it in thoroughly. After application, water the area deeply and slowly. This helps settle the bone meal into the soil, kickstarts the breakdown process, and ensures it makes contact with the surrounding root zone rather than staying concentrated in one place. If you'd rather apply it as a liquid feed instead of a dry powder, you can make a simple bone meal soak. Mix 1 tablespoon of bone meal into a gallon of water, stir well, and let it sit for 24 to 48 hours so some of the nutrients begin to dissolve. Strain out the solids, then use the liquid to water around the drip line. This method releases nutrients a bit faster and is gentler on tender root systems than concentrated dry powder. Timing is where a lot of well-meaning gardeners go wrong, so let's be very clear about this. When not to use it, avoid applying bone meal during the heat of summer, especially to a plant that's already stressed from drought or high temperatures. Adding any soil amendment to a stressed plant can do more harm than good. Don't apply it in late fall or winter either, since the plant isn't actively taking up nutrients during dormancy, and the material will simply sit unused in the soil, slowly nudging pH upward without providing any real benefit. Also avoid applying it if your soil test shows pH already above 6.0, or if you've applied bone meal within the last several months. Repeated applications without monitoring is exactly how alkaline buildup happens. The ideal time, the best window is early spring, just as the plant is waking up from dormancy and before major new growth begins, or at the moment of planting or transplanting a new azalea into the garden. Early spring application supports root activity and bud development right when the plant can actually use it. And soil moisture from spring rains helps it break down gradually rather than sitting inert. Reapplication frequency. Because bone meal breaks down slowly, you don't need to reapply it often. For an established azalea, once a year at most is plenty, and honestly, every other year is often sufficient, especially if you're also testing your soil pH regularly. If you're tempted to apply it more frequently because you're not seeing results fast enough, resist that urge. Bone meal is a slow-release amendment, not a quick fix, and more frequent applications raise your risk of pH drift without meaningfully speeding up results. A good rule of thumb: apply, wait, test your soil again in 6 months, and only reapply if your levels genuinely call for it. So what can you actually expect to see, and when? Because bone meal breaks down slowly, don't expect fast, dramatic changes. This isn't a quick-release liquid fertilizer that shows results in days. In the first 2 to 3 weeks, you likely won't notice much visually, and that's completely normal. The phosphorus and calcium are still breaking down and becoming available in the soil. Around the 4 to 6 week mark, if conditions are right, you may start to notice slightly stronger new growth and a healthier green color to new leaves, particularly if your azalea was previously a bit thin on phosphorus. The real payoff shows up later, often the following bloom cycle. Since phosphorus supports flower bud development, the benefit of a well-timed spring application often reveals itself months later, as more numerous, fuller flower buds form ahead of the next blooming season. Many gardeners report noticeably better bloom density the season after a correctly timed moderate bone meal application, more flowers, slightly larger blooms, and a fuller-looking shrub overall. On the flip side, if you're watching for warning signs of overuse, keep an eye on new leaves over the following 2 to 3 months. If you start to see yellowing between green veins, that's your cue to test your soil pH. It's the earliest visible sign that things may be drifting in the wrong direction, and catching it early makes it easy to correct. So there you have it. Bone meal isn't a magic bullet, and it isn't a hidden danger either. It's a slow, steady amendment that can genuinely support your azalea's roots and blooms when you use it thoughtfully, the right amount, at the right time, with an eye on your soil's pH along the way. Respect the plant's need for acidic soil, apply with restraint, and you'll set your azalea up for a fuller, healthier bloom next season. If this video helped clear things up, give it a thumbs up, subscribe for more real, practical growing advice, and I'll see you in the next one.